Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Getting Through the Cracks too. It's my pleasure today to introduce Camila Bauer, if you'd like to switch your camera on, Camila, and Pedro Lunaris from Projecto GOMPA in Brazil. So my name is Louise Katerega, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me at the moment. But firstly, I'd just like to welcome you to the space and invite you all who are watching to also put in the chat perhaps your name, where you're watching us from, a little bit about your work or the work that you do, if you like. I'll explain a little bit first about what Getting Through the Cracks is. I'll take us through what we'll be doing together this afternoon, and then we'll just go. So as I say, my name is Louise Katerega. My pronouns are she and her. I'm coming to you today from the north of England in York, and my background is in dance. I have done nearly every job in the dance industry: performer, teacher, choreographer, mentor, and now I am a dance producer working at People Dancing, which is the UK flagship organisation for community and participatory dance. And perhaps the other things you need to know about me in this space are my heritage is Ugandan and English European, but I have visited Brazil to do some of the work that I've done most of, which is dance working with disabled people. So I'm going to apologise now for my Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation, and I'm just going to do my best. And the other thing that you perhaps need to know about me is that I'm a huge fan of fairy tales. So it was an absolute delight to watch and engage with your work. I will just briefly, oh, hello, Flibbity Gibbet. Yes, people are beginning to say hello. I'll just briefly, I'm going to change screens if you'll just give me a moment, and I'll tell you all about Getting Through the Cracks and Theatre Alibi. So Getting Through the Cracks is a webinar series, especially for performance makers for young audiences. Since 2020, Theatre Alibi have been hosting hour-long conversations with internationally renowned performance makers for young audiences. They have been sharing a behind-the-scenes look at their process, giving an insight into how and why they create their work. So as has been happening in other seminars like this, first Camila and Pedro will talk about their work, they'll show us some videos. I might ask a couple of questions to get us going, but really we're encouraging you guys to ask the questions by, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the Q&A box to put your questions into there. And also we will have a Padlet for which you will get the link either during or at the end of the seminar, and you will be able to continue the conversation in there. So I'll tell you about Theatre Alibi. Theatre Alibi are based in Devon in the southwest of England. For nearly 40 years, they've been creating work with and for people of all ages, performing in all sorts of places, from theatres to village halls, libraries, and on the streets. Each year, the company tours extensively to primary schools, reaching around 12,000 children. And for many of those children, an Alibi show will be their first experience of theatre. The thread that runs through Theatre Alibi's work is story, and the belief that a good story, beautifully told, can help us get a precious handle on a chaotic world. And I think I can definitely guarantee you that that's what we're talking about today, a beautiful story, beautifully told, and about its impact on us in the real world. In recent years, Alibi have been the subject of a PhD study looking at the impact of live performance on children, and that work has led to this series of talks coming into existence. So I'll just introduce Camila, Pedro, and Projecto GOMPA. Camila Bauer is a theatre director and a professor at the drama department at Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, or UFRGS. She has a PhD in Sciences of the Spectacle by the University of Sevilla, and in Information and Communication, mentioned Scenic Arts by the Free University of Brussels, 2010. She graduated in theatre direction from UFRGS in 2004 and developed multiple projects in scenic direction, among them The Last Black Woman in 2021, Frankenstein 2019, which I believe is going to be revived, and we may talk about that, The Enemies in a Doll's House 2018, The Little Red Riding Hood 2017, the subject of our conversation today, the operas Don Pasquale and Tempos di Solidade in Winehouse 2016, Verde Intenso 2015, and the opera Die Schöne und Getreue Adriana 2015, among others. She conducted playwright workshops in Mexico, Spain, and other cities in Brazil. She directs the company Projecto GOMPA, with whom she won different theatre awards, such as the Ibsen Scholarship in Norway, Tibuquera Award, and Brascan Award in Brazil. And over to Pedro. Pedro is our connection with the real world, the connection between the real world and the story. Pedro has a degree in psychology and master's degree in social and institutional psychology, both from Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, UFRGS also. He has been acting with group coordination since university. Theatre has been an important part of his professional career. During his psychology degree, Pedro created a 2-year practice exploring experimental theatre and improvisation with a group of students from different courses. That practice has continued into an independent group for 3 years and has been a reference to other experimental groups for theatre and psychology during his master's programme. Today, Pedro works as a consultant in cooperative and collective planning, and also as head of culture at Seasons Software Development. So onto Projecto GOMPA as a company itself. Projecto GOMPA is an award-winning Brazilian collective of artists created in 2014 by the director Camila Bauer in Porto Alegre, Brazil. The group develops dramaturgical and scenic language, experimentation, and reaches possible crossings between theatre, dance, and music, emphasizing the fusion of different forms of art as narrative outlets. The projects are created in collaboration with various, in collaboration with varied types of artists, resulting in a hybrid language that expands the limits of what is understood about performing arts for adults and performing arts for youth. And that's the end of my introductions. So over to Camila and Pedro for 15-20 minutes to share the work in speech and in video. I know some of you out there have seen the full work. I have seen the full work. It isn't commercially available though. So all I can say is pay close attention, because what we're about to see is the basis of our discussion. Over to you, Pedro and Camila. Welcome and bom dia.
Hello, it's a pleasure for us to be here today, talking with you and sharing a bit of our work. I'd like to thank Louise, Pilar, and Hati for this invitation and the organization of this talk. It's an honor for us to be here. I'd like to apologize for my English because it's a bit difficult for me, but I will do my best for us to be able to communicate. And then I would like to start sharing 2 small videos. One that is, you can see a bit of our work as Projecto GOMPA, and another one that's more specific about the Little Red. Let me see here.
De onde veio e quem são seus pais? Quem são seus pais? O direito do cérebro, de onde veio e quem são seus pais?
Uma pessoa contou a história. Não havia o que contar. Como ela poderia contar uma história de algo que não existiu? Como ela poderia ser real se tudo que tinha era o seu olhar sobre si mesma?
Silêncio.
Me deixei vivendo inteira só por você.
Era uma vez uma menina que estava proibida de sair de casa sozinha, ou somente em raríssimas ocasiões. Então ela se entediava porque ela não tinha nem irmão, nem irmã, somente sua mãe, que ela amava muito. Mas isso não bastava, então ela brincava.
Eu não tenho medo de você.
Eu também não tenho medo.
Quem eu quero bem, me espere em meu planeta. Vem você também, pelo universo em um cometa. Quem eu quero bem, me espere em meu planeta. Vem você também, pelo universo em um cometa. Ou pilotando um avião, ou através.
Is it working well? Deixa aí? Ok.
Era uma vez uma menina que estava proibida de sair de casa sozinha, ou somente em raríssimas ocasiões. Então ela se entediava porque ela não tinha nem irmão, nem irmã, somente sua mãe, que ela amava muito. Mas isso não bastava, então ela brincava. Ela brincava sozinha, muito sozinha. Ela também reparou dois olhos grandes que pareciam olhar em sua direção.
Eu não tenho medo de você.
Eu também não tenho medo.
Eu não sei quem você é.
Eu também não te conheço.
Eu não sei quem você é, mas eu não tenho medo.
Okay, so it's a bit of our Little Red. For you to have an idea, I don't know if everybody that's here had the possibility to see it. So as a group, Projecto GOMPA was created in 2014, and we started researching theater for the young audience. Our first performance was The Little Prince, a bit different from the original one, and it was made for small children, changing some elements and things like that. And then after we followed in this research for a language for children that could interact both with children and adults. This was the main question for us, or one of the main questions for us in The Little Red, how to do a performance that could communicate with children and also with adults, not separating them in this specific work. And I knew this text from João Pomerá. I had performed one of his texts before, that it was Je Tremble, that's a performance for adults, like 5 years before, I think I did it. And I was studying his works, his plays. And then I wanted to do The Little Red. I'm a bit like Louise that loves fairy tales. And when I was a child, I loved to hear these small discos with the stories. I don't know if in the UK you had this thing. In Brazil, it's very common. I grew up listening these stories. My mother said I was all the time putting again and again and again. And The Little Red was one of them. Then when we started rehearsing, I talked with Álvaro Rosa Costa, that is the musician that did the sound of the performance. And I told him that I wanted to do something like that you could close your eyes and just listen, and that it would sound a bit like this discos, because I found that very like a bit of terror in these small discos. I was listening and I was a bit afraid of that, and I was imagining all the time what could be happening. Then this is one of the experiences I wanted to do, and with Álvaro we started creating this for the sound and for this storytelling, because in the first, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes of the play, it's just the storytelling, the guy telling this story. We created and composed some images. For example, in the original text, we don't have the character of the mother, but we decided to put with a dancer, it's Fabiani, that's composing with the girl that's doing the Little Red. Her name is Laura. They were creating this line of mother and daughter for the small children, let's say, to see what's happening and have this visual element, but also with this work with the sound. Then this is something that was important for me, like how we could mix these elements, how to put dance inside the theater, giving it some space, creating something that's sometimes more figurative, sometimes more abstract, about what's being told in the text, what he's telling in the text, how to put the music inside that, and also working with a visual artist from here, that's also Rossini, that did this scenography and the object that they are moving, how to use just a few elements in the performance, and with the light, creating this atmosphere, like thinking the scenography and the space as sound, as light, as their bodies, how we could put all these elements together to create the performance. We usually do that in theater, but we had this possibility of work together since the beginning, all of us. It's not that easy in Brazil to happen. There is something about the economy of culture that makes it to be very difficult. This is a performance we did absolutely without any money. we did not get any subvention or financial thing we decided to do. And then everybody wanted to do, and we decided, okay, let's stay 3 months rehearsing every day. We got some period that we had some vacations in the university. I think it was possible because 3 of the 4 actors, they were students at that time. Then it was possible to, okay, let's get these vacations and work a lot and create the performance. We had a research group in the university in dramaturgy, and then we followed that. And also the choreographer, the light designer, the visual artist, the musician, they said, okay, let's do it. And then we followed and created the performance. Something that for me is very important in this text is the possibility for the children to experience fear. This fear of going out, this fear of the wolf and everything that this wolf can represent, this fear of growing up, this fear of going to the life, and all the excitement that it brings together, all the panic that it brings together, and how do we follow and we go to life even with the fear. There is something that Pomerá said, because he did this text thinking of his daughter. I think she was 6 at that time, because usually he writes plays for adults. It was the first one that he wrote for children. It was for his daughter that was 6 at that point. And he's saying that it's a kind of initiation to the fear. And because sometimes we protect too much the children, and then they grow up and they become like coward adults, afraid of life, of making choice, of the risk, afraid of the risk of life. And he wanted it to do a kind of work in this field, like considering that this stage is a safe place for us to be afraid of something and to feel free. Pedro can talk better about that after. But how do we put on stage this fear? How we construct this atmosphere? This is something that for us was a big question. How to put the scenography, the sound, their bodies to construct this excitement, this idea that what is outside is very interesting, but also very, very scary. And how do we deal with that? Another thing that for me was important is in a certain way to show these 3 generations of women that they have to work, they have to create, grow up their children, they have to take care of the home. This universe that is very familiar, I think, to all the women in a certain way. In this absence of the positive male figure, we do not see the man in this performance and in this text. Where is the father? I think it's something that in Brazil is very strong. I think here we start arriving some questions that for us is they are very important here. These big amounts of mothers that they have to follow with their children, help them and work, and that the men just leave. They are not present, they are not there as parents, as father, also with the grandparents. This generation of women that they have to be strong and they need to follow. And also this boredom that the children is feeling, they feel. We are today like full of inputs all the time. This excitement about everything and the internet and everything is very fast. And that the children, they are almost not allowed to be bored and to deal with that, with this emptiness, with this with this absence of something to do or something to see or something to listen. Just stay. There are all the time things happening, and if they start getting bored, then just give the mobile to them, and then the mobile distracts them while the family is doing something else. And for us was important to put this mother that does not have time, not because she doesn't want to, but because she has a lot of things to do. And this child that does not have technology or something to distract her, she's there, being lonely. And how to deal with that, no? With your own boredom and face to life. And also this generation of the grandmother that's living in the other side of the wall, of the forest. No? How is she getting old, alone? That's also something very important here. I don't know how it's in the UK, but here people are getting older. There is an economic problem about that. There is the family that sometimes cannot take care of these old people, the old generations. Sometimes they go to a specific place for that. Sometimes they stay alone. The family try to take care, but also that's put a margin. How do I say that? In the border of something, in the border of society, not really in the center, not inside, but in the border, in the other side of something. And we need to cross this forest to arrive there. Then they are far from the center of society. They are put behind in a certain way. This is something that's important for us, and that's very common here. And also this fear of going outside. Okay, these last 2 years, it became very evident, I think, everywhere, this fear of going outside. But there is something about the danger, not just the danger of life, of growing up, but also that someone can kill you. Someone can steal you. And Brazil is a very violent country. Then there is also something about that, this violence that is surrounding, especially if you are a woman or a girl. There is this other kind of violence that's all the time surrounding, and that's very present in the tale as well, in this fairy tale specifically, that is surrounding the things. So this is another important element, I think, in the performance. Well, I could follow. I will give the word to Pedro, and then after you make questions and we follow talking.
Thank you, Camila. And over to Pedro. Yes, one of the questions I had about it was, how much is this a woman's story? How much is this a girl's story? And I think you've just answered that with why in the context of Brazil, like, could you have the same story if it was a single father and a little boy? I don't think it would resonate in quite the same way, but yes, it could be about fear. But yeah, thank you very much, Camila, and over to Pedro.
Well, I have a little to add to what Camila said. I joined these display. I collaborated with it at the end of the rehearsals, and Camila asked me for my opinion as like someone to sorry, I'm kind of muttering. My English is not trying to get sorry, just a second. Let me start over again. Well, Camila asked me for my opinion as a psychologist because we were kind of worried about how the play was going to look like for children, because there's like layers of narrative in it. And there's this idea of having a play that works for a mature audience and for children as well. And there's this like subtle aspect of it that could relate to abuse and heavy subjects. And we were worried if that could trigger something, especially with the children. And what the group was seeing the first time they showed the play to in schools, and is that children that were younger than 6 just wouldn't get to that heavy aspect, because they would get engaged with like the fairy tale aspect and the I could call it the superficial layer of the narrative, but I don't think it's superficial. It's complex in its own on a card. But we were worried if things could get out of hand, and even if the play has this objective of offering a safe space to feel fear and to deal with those frightening aspects, it should be safe, right? So were we going too far? And my impression of it was that it was so well constructed, and the play itself offered those safe aspects, like the characters, they were getting frightened, but they were overcoming the fear, and they were playing, and they were constructing ways to deal with the hard stuff, and to dialogue, and to grow, and to overcome stuff. So they were great models for us as a family, or as children that were getting these feelings about things, but not the complete thoughts. And to me, what got me, and we were talking about this previously when we were preparing for this presentation, is what do we think about protection, and how do we protect our children? And protection could mean a lot of things. And I do think that the best protection that we can give is also the ability to speak about stuff, to recognize the hard stuff, and to overcome. And how do we create that kind of skill, that kind of ability, and that inner space, the ability to feel, the ability to live this? Camila talks about this, the excitement of going out, and also the panic about growing up, and about dealing with this stuff that we don't know what they are, but we have a feeling about it. And I was thinking, what is a shelter? And in my opinion, the best shelter gives us a view of the coming storm, for us to be able to prepare, and for us to be able to endure it. And if we don't talk about the hard stuff that life presents us in a safe way, but if we don't address it, if we don't prepare for it, we won't be ready. And if we can't protect our children with walls, because they will run away from the walls at some point, and they will become adults. And so how can we recognize this stuff in a safe manner? And theater presents this opportunity to us, because what is happening on stage can relate to it, and we can, and it's alive in a way, but it's also a tale. And the Little Red Riding Hood presents this opportunity because from the start we get this frightening lightning, and the sound really present, and the narrator telling the story to us, and it's something else. And Camila told about it, like the first 20 minutes, the characters, they are dancing and they are interacting, and we are getting this, what is happening, but it's different than everyday life. And it's so evident that we can feel like it's real, but it's not at the same time. So that protects us. And also, I told it already, what the characters are feeling, they can get sad, they can get frightened, but they are talking about it. And that's really powerful. They are bringing the stuff up. And the main character, she's saying, I'm not afraid, even though we can see that she is. So she's talking about it. And there's whole lot of things that we can discuss, and it gives us the opportunity to talk about this stuff. So one of the ideas that we had at the start was to create those dialogues after the play was presented, and that is something to me that is reflects the care that the group had with this complexity. We can show it, we can offer this this world of hard stuff, but we remain there to talk about it and to create dialogue, and that is really powerful. And maybe that's a strong message to pass on, and to create the possibility for us to live those stuff. Like, we can overcome stuff if we have dialogue, and if we have this lasting care about each thing that could be triggered, or that could be felt. How does it sound to you?
Pedro, that makes perfect sense to me, having listened and watched the performance. And your talk of the way theatre can lead to conversations reminded me of a real world story that you both told me, that was as a consequence of seeing the work. A young boy had a conversation with his parents. Camila, do you want to tell that story? It's a beautiful illustration of how the theatre was this safe space for this little boy, began to explore a trauma, and then as a result fixed his life. So Camila, it was you who told the story when we were speaking before, but I think feel free to both tell it together. But yeah, Little Red Riding Hood really did make a difference in a young child's life.
Yeah, I can share. It's a strong story. We listened, had this feedback about a girl that she went with her nephew to see the performance. He was 7 years old, and after seeing he saw the performance, he was very okay, and then when he arrived home, he started making some draws, and then he started drawing the wolf with his penis, and he made a small boy that it was him, and he started showing to the mother. And then she was a bit scared what happened and what was this performance he saw about. And then he talked with the girl that took him to the theater. And then she explained what it was about, that we didn't show anything. There was a wolf. He was walking with his four hands, feet. And then the mother took him to the psychologist to see what was going on. And then he started talking and making other draws in the psychologist. And then they understood that he was being abused by the boyfriend of the mother. It's not the father of the guy. It was, they were divorced, and the boyfriend of the mother. She couldn't believe, and then she took him to another psychologist, and then he said the same. She finished with the boyfriend, and then the guy started doing some therapy and things like that. And then we understood, because I was very afraid about that. How would the children react? That's why we talked with Pedro and with another psychologist that came to the rehearsals, and especially at the end of the process, to see how it was working in these different layers of narrative that Pedro mentioned. And then we understood that the performance could bring to light something if something had happened. If nothing happened, they will not see anything. They cannot perceive this kind of violence unless they have experienced that themselves. Then they recognize something. And also in some performances we did after the show, we had this talk that Pedro was saying. We did it a lot, especially with schools and some festivals, bringing some invited people to talk after the performance. And there was a lot of people, especially girls, telling their stories about abusive relationships and things with father and grandfather and family members and things like that. And they are exposing that. We cannot do something about that specifically, because this is not our field of work, but sometimes it brings something like a kind of catharsis in some way. And then we try to conduct them or direct them to some psychologist or a different kind of therapy, depending on what they say. But yeah, I believe that theater can bring things to light. It cannot solve anything. This is not the thing about theater, but bringing things. And also this that Pedro mentioned, that for me is very important, how to prepare for something. Not that we can be prepared. Of course, we cannot be prepared, and it's not theater that's going to prepare us. It would be too arrogant to believe that we can do something about that, but to talk about that and maybe create some space for parents to talk with their children, because it's there. And sometimes they ask what happened. When we had our first show in a small city around here, we got a feedback from two mothers. We got very nice feedback, but there was two specific ones that they said that it shouldn't be performed for children because it was a kind of carnage. When the wolf kills or eat the little red and the grandma. But in the show, when what the wolf does, he jumps and we turn off the light. We did not show anything. There's nothing. It's just the stage without light. It's this black image, this black tableau, where you can imagine anything you want. We do not show anything. We did it. This was a decision to not show anything and to create space, this empty space, where the spectator could imagine anything, even if they eat that like animal or wherever they want to imagine. There is a strong sound that is like doors being closed, and the sound of the wolf, the animal sound, but there is nothing being shown. Then all this carnage that these two mothers saw, they saw it, they created it. And I think it's very powerful. as an answer to what we were asking. A lot of mothers and the children that saw their small children, I think they were 5, they were not afraid of the wolf. They wanted to make picture with the wolf after the performance. They want to talk with the wolf, and they are very funny, the children, because the wolf, he was wearing a mask, and during the whole performance you do not see the actor's face. It's like that, you just see the wolf here. But after the performance you can see the wolf, or you can see the actor. When they go to say hello, they always talk with the children after. We think it's important to bring them to the real universe, and they see that they are actors playing these characters, and they can talk with the actors. And okay, this was a performance, especially when we have small children. We do not recommend them to see. We always put for children with more than 7, but usually they come. They are 3, they are 4, they are 5. The parents bring, and we recommend for bigger children, but we do not put a restriction for that. And they go and they prepare. They look at the actor that's doing the wolf, and they say, "I want to talk with the wolf." It was a small girl. She was 3 years old. She almost couldn't talk, but she was saying to the actor that she wanted to talk with the wolf. And then Enrique, that's doing the wolf, put the wolf. And she was saying to the wolf, "You shouldn't do that. You should respect the older people." And she started giving lessons to the wolf. And then he was saying, "Okay, I'm talking with the wolf." And then he put again, and she was 3.
That's wonderful. Both of
It's
those
wonderful.
both of those stories for me, the distressing story about the young boy who disclosed abuse, the reaction of the children who talk to the wolf as if they're real. They both speak to something that you both told me about respecting children's responses. It's not for us adults or the mothers to say it's scary without asking the children first. And that came across very strongly. I think I saw it in one of the reviews at that you do take the audience by the hand, you respect what the children might encounter in your performance. But it also sounds like, although you're being very brave and daring and scary, there are many safe things surrounding it. You can meet the actors and see that they're not real. You signpost people on to help and support. It sounds like a very good balance to me. Now, I happen to know that Pilar, who is on the call from Theatre Alibi, has some questions. So Pilar, I'm going to invite you to unmute, put your camera on, and take up the discussion.
Oh, thank you. I didn't really want to, this is the first time that I do an appearance, but I was bursting with this thought after hearing what you, Camila, and Pedro was saying. I was particularly touched with this piece when I saw it the first time, and that's why I was quite keen on having this conversation with you guys, and particularly because I think it's so relevant to today's reality in the world, this issue of fear. And as an adult, who's that wolf today in our lives? Who are we being told is the evil, and this idea that I feel that we are getting, and we are also transmitting to our children today, that someone else have to save us, or something else have to save us from this wolf, whereas we know that the strength is within us. It's not about having I'm going to be very concrete about having a sort of a vaccine, or having restrictions, or having a super powerful government telling you what to do, what not to do. So I feel today what it really scares me is that us as societies are sort of giving our power to protect ourselves, to look after ourselves, and to someone else. So we are not connecting to our inner strength and to our capacity to overcome those fears that we're born with, and the children shows us they you know, they learn to be fearful of the wolf. They're not naturally fearful of the wolf. So that for me today, because I'm a bit sort of shocked by the way that this whole story in, you know, in relation to the virus is untangling in some countries, you know, Austria, and it's just every day I'm like more and more shocked by how we've been sort of driven in this really, for me, kind of a bit horrific way of conducting the societies, and just like keep on thinking how we've forgotten our capacity to, you know, as humans, to, you know, to face those fears, and, you know, and to protect ourselves from, because the strength that we already have. So I just think that this kind of discussions and bringing into you know, bringing back this fairy tales with so much wisdom, and again observing children's wisdom would inform us and give us a lot of answers that today we're not listening to. We're listening to the wrong advices. That's my opinion. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to respond? Did you want to respond to that, Camila? I would say yes. I thoroughly agree, and it the wolves today. It reminded me today of children giving away their information on the internet. The child, Red Riding Hood, she tells the wolf everything about who she is and where she's going, etc., etc. That was what it reminded me of. But fairy tales are there to tell children that you are resourceful, you will get into trouble, but you will get yourself out of it. But sorry, Camila, did you want to respond to Pilar?
No, I totally agree. And I was thinking that this specific fairy tale, I know it has different ends in different countries, and here also there are different ends, but this one specifically, it brings like a kind of relief at the end when you open the wolf and you can find both of them. It's so fantastic. And both are alive and they follow. The girl, the little red, and the grandma, and the wolf understand that he cannot do that with children, especially with the small ones. And he go back to the forest and decided, this is something that the storyteller is saying at the end, and he decided never more to get closer to a child or to a woman and to live among wolves. I think it brings a kind of relief in a sense that, okay, you can experience that, as Pilar said, you have our own research to follow and to face life in a certain way, but there is also this element like, okay, the guilty one recognizes it and changes. Of course, we know that it's not happening in real life, but we have the hope that at a certain point things could change. And also this thing that Pomeha puts in a text that, okay, the girl and the grandma, they follow, but they will always remember what happened to them. And this will, in a certain way, guide some decisions and some lines or some ways that they will follow in their lives. Like, okay, it happened, we kind of get a happy end, but they are marked in their bodies, in their lives forever. This is something that I find very important that he put in the text. We follow, we find our own ways and research and things like that, but we are kind of drawn with that. It's part of us now. And then we follow carrying this experience, not leaving it behind because it's not possible, but this is going to follow.
Yes, two important things there, that as a child, you already have the power. You have the power to say no, you have the power to not tell, you have the power. You don't need that power bestowing by adults, it's already there. But yes, you must carry the lessons and the stories, and that the stories of others connect with us. They can be our story too, but we can learn from other survival. Wonderful. We have a question from Nikki Sved from Theatre Alibi, if I can't find it. And it's around that idea of the care and responsibility that you were talking about that goes with the performance. I'll just read out because she's got a response and a question. I love hearing you both talking with such care and responsibility, and with the real sense that theatre can provide a safe opportunity to think about things that are difficult and painful. Children deserve that. I wonder if you have any thoughts about trigger warnings. Is that a familiar phrase? It means when you warn that something is about to happen in this show, that if you have a trauma, it might set you off. The idea that difficult subjects should be highlighted for audiences before they watch a performance. I ask, as I feel somewhat conflicted about that. Yes, who should we tell that it's coming? What happens in Brazil? Are there rules? What do you think? What have your choices been?
I think you are right. It can bring something, but I think when you listen that there is a play that's The Little Red Riding Hood that's being performed at 8 in the evening, I think you already know that something in this kind of field is going to appear. It's not like a fairy tale about another thing. You know that this fairy tale is about that. We already thought if we should say something about that, it could bring something, or that you do not recommend, or it's difficult to say, for people that experience a kind of trauma or something like that. But what we understood is that, and also this is important about these talks we have after the performance to understand how is it happening, is that the people that experienced a kind of trauma about that, they already knew when they went to see it in the theater that it could come, because this is a play about that. And if you see like the light and the aesthetic of the performance, you see it's a bit dark in a certain way. It's not like a happy Little Red. It is a bit heavy in a certain way. Then I think it's already the kind of advice it's already made. So from the title of the play, I think
all
it is
signs
about
are, all the signs are already there. And then, as you say, with this particular play, we have the advantage that Red Riding Hood is a story that's known all around the world, etc. My son has autism, so sometimes it's very important to explain certain things to him before a show. But that is a real need that is very different from this triggering. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. The signs are there. And if you are going to be triggered, you would possibly pick that up already. And as you say, you seem to have some mechanisms for if somebody was triggered, you would be able to tell them who to go to.
Did he see the performance? Did you show?
No, my son hasn't seen it.
Because we had in the audience some children with autism, and one guy that saw, he's a son of one artist. Then we have some contact. She said that it was a very nice experience to him. She explained something. And also we have the program of the play with some talks from Pedro, from the other psychologists and things like that. that I think helps the father and the mother and the family to explain to the children something if they consider it important, and also to decide. It already happened as well, that we gave that, and we always give this program and we say try to read it before.
Yeah.
It's short, but it gives some information. I think it's enough as information. And there was two people that they decided not to see it. So I will not see.
Yeah.
One with a child and another one was just a lady. I think it's also kind of advice.
Yes, yes. If you give people the information beforehand, they can begin to make their own mind.
They choose.
I do think my son would very much enjoy it, actually, because he loves wolves, he loves monsters. He attends an ordinary school, and lots of his anxieties about what's going to happen. So I wouldn't need to tell him about the scary bits. I just need to let him know generally that, you know, this was the story, and he is able to tell very easily what's real and what's not, which some autistic people can't. But he has a great love of animals and feels that animals are able to tell him things about the world and to connect. That's perhaps dialed up a little bit stronger with him. But yes, it was wonderful. And my daughter is a great fan of Red Riding Hood as well. And we were talking when we met about, she likes the version of Red Riding Hood by the author Roald Dahl, where Red Riding Hood has a gun in her knickers and she gets it out and shoots the wolf, and she has a fur coat. So we're drawing to a close now. So I don't know if Pilar and Camila and Pedro, is there any one more thing you wanted to leave us with from Red Riding Hood? Perhaps we've talked a lot about the meaning. Is there anything about the art that you wanted to pass on?
I think it's all connected, because all these things, for example, that we are saying, in a certain way, you try to put that as a language. For example, Pedro was talking about this storm that comes in the life sometimes, and I was remembering that we made the sound, for example, with the sound of the rain, and it started, it's a small rain, and then it's a huge rain. Then you cannot go outside because this storm is happening. It's happening inside, it's happening outside. I think the signs we tried to construct and make them visible. These things these elements that are kind of invisible, how to give visibility to that in a certain way.
Yes, like they're in our minds or in children's hearts. We make them visible, and then the visible turns into the words, which turns into these beautiful conversations. Pedro, did you want to have any last word also?
I don't have much to add. I just think that what I was feeling when hearing you talk is the power that theater offers us to have company, to feel what we are feeling, and to have language to speak about it, because we usually don't have language already given when we are experiencing hard stuff or complex things or confusing things. And so this play offers us something of that, and theater as a whole, and all the presential arts, I think, offers us. Even if you're doing it online, we have this quality of being. We can see there's people there, there are actors and actresses, and there's something that is more obvious in that regard than movies and series, and that creates, to me, more connection, and that connection relates to company, and to be with company in those complex experiences. That's a blessing.
Yes.
So
yeah, Wonderful. Well, I'm going to say what I'm going to take from your collaboration. How beautiful, what a beautiful ending to hear the artist talking about how much she respects and wants to engage with science. And then to hear the scientist, you, Pedro, talking about how important art is. That really warms my heart, because especially in the UK, there's a very kind of art science divide. And the truth is we all need each other. And that was summed up beautifully in what you just said, Pedro, about we need each other as human beings. That's the need underneath all of this. And in a very ancient way, human beings have been telling each other stories. We are story machines. We've been doing this since time immemorial. And you've told us a very beautiful, ancient story, but brought it right up to date as well and proved how timeless it is. So thank you so much, both of you. And it's over to, I think here is the link. Yes, it's just turned up in the chat. The link to the Padlet if you wish to continue the conversations. It's been absolutely wonderful meeting both of you. I dearly hope some programmer out there watching this is going to give a great press to the show so that we can bring it to the UK. Because yes, it really does look like a production to be in the room with. It does work very well on screen. I really engaged with it, but I want to be in the room with it too now after speaking to you. Thank you so very much. And to the general Theatre Alibi audience, do watch this space for a little bit more getting through the cracks in future. I think we have some thank yous. Yes. Nikki is saying, thank you, so many wise words from you all, fascinating and inspiring. So I think that's where we'll close. So thank you so much to Theatre Alibi, to Pilar, Nikki, to Pedro and Camila, and obrigado, thank you. And how do we say goodbye?
Ciao.
Ciao. Okay. So ciao.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
To see you again. Thank you for your time.